technology and innovation community includes over 100 companies and research organizations from a variety of sectors, just like space, cyber, materials, automobility, clean tech. And all those companies and your research activities have relevant technologies and know-how for the 5 operational domains of defense that are land, air, sea, cyber, and space. Over 40 of the companies, particularly startups and SMEs, are engaged today in the European Defence Initiative, such as the European Defence Agency or the European Defence Fund, as well as initiatives from NATO. Besides these international initiatives, we have also been able to set up a national joint defense corps for the development of dual-use technologies in defense by creating synergies between economy, research, and defense. I thank you all for being present today. I invite you to a productive meeting covering 2023 activities, but also offering a preview of what 2024 will bring us. Enjoy the meeting. Please take notes. Please feel free to ask some questions. And I leave the floor to Alexander Link, who will introduce to us the agenda of today's meeting.
Thank you very much, Benjamin. Thank you for the welcome speech. Let me then just have a quick look together with you on the agenda. So the next 90 minutes will be dedicated first to 10 minutes a slot for activities that we've been doing in 2023 and which are an integral part of our mission as part of the collaboration with the Directorate of Defense. Then we will go more deeply into the different defense initiatives on national, European, and NATO level with respective presentations by my colleague Rebecca Damotte from Luxinnovation, then also Julien Silverio from the Directorate of Defense, but unfortunately he's not there today, so I will replace him for the presentation. Then there's also Aziz Guérin from the Permanent Representation of Luxembourg to the EU for the European Defence Fund, and François Koch from the Permanent Representation of Luxembourg to NATO for the NATO initiatives. And then eventually there will be a 10 minutes outlook on the, sorry for the error here, on the 2024 activities, followed by 20 minutes for Q&A, where we can take your questions and discuss your challenges. So let me start with the mission of Luxinnovation in the frame of its collaboration with the Directorate of Defense. So we started the collaboration, as mentioned by Benjamin, 3 years ago. And today, this year, we renewed this agreement in order to integrate also new missions, which are the following 3 ones. First one is to create and animate a Luxembourg defense technology and innovation community. The second one is to integrate the Luxembourg industry and research into the European defense value chain, this via national, European, and NATO initiatives. And eventually, there's also a component on promoting the Luxembourg industry and research defense capabilities at international level, and this, of course, in collaboration also with relevant partners from the national ecosystem.
Alex, the slides don't change.
Oh, sorry.
Actually, I don't see any slides, sorry.
I don't see slides either.
Let me check. Can you see now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so this was the first slide. Just explaining rapidly the different missions that are part of our collaboration with the Directorate of Defense. Then here we have this slide about the Luxembourg Defense Technology and Innovation Community. As already introduced by Benjamin, we have today up to 100 companies and research organizations from Luxembourg, which are either active in defense initiatives or have relevant technologies and know-how for defense. And within these 100 companies and research organizations, over 40 are already active in these different initiatives on European and international level. This is a constantly growing community, and to this purpose, also to show what Luxembourg can do in terms of defense capabilities, we are publishing on an annual basis a catalog, which you see on the right side, and which shows which defense capabilities are produced by the industry and research to promote this at international level. Another important point here is that within this community, we have very different companies. Okay, they represent sectors like space, cyber, materials, energy, and environment. But when it comes to applications in defense, it's much larger. So you can see that those are also active in land domains, in simulation domains, information superiority, optronics, and cyber. So let's have a quick look at all the initiatives that are being followed at the moment. And of course, there will be more details later on by each of the colleagues. So the second mission of our collaboration agreement is about the integration of the Luxembourg industry and research into the European defense value chain. The first stream are national EU and NATO initiatives. So to start with, it's the National Joint Defense Core Initiative that we started in 2022. Together with the Ministry of Economy, the Ministry of Research and Higher Education, the Ministry of Defense or Directorate of Defense, the National Research Fund, and Luxinnovation, and it targets the development of dual-use technologies that meet the needs of European security and defense in priority domains of Luxembourg Directorate of Defense. There will be more information on that later on by Rebecca. Then we have the two key initiatives on European level. At first, the European Defence Agency, which is basically the agency for the Ministry of Defence in Europe, and it addresses in a particular stream also the development of defense capability technologies within the so-called CAPTEX, and they are aiming at developing the EU future defense capability through dedicated research and technology framework. Then there's the European Defence Fund, which is an 8 billion euro fund of the European Commission, which is also targeting the financing of collaborative defense flagship projects, but it really looks at also the bigger projects and also with the aim of operational use by 2028. More information on that later on by Azilis Guérin. And then we have also on NATO side since 2022 the establishment of new instruments which are targeting the development of dual-use technologies and also the spinning in of civil technologies into defense. Basically with two instruments. The first one is the NATO Defense Innovation Accelerator, which is a network of accelerators and test centers combined with a regular call for proposals that enable the development of dual-use technologies in Europe and the NATO allied member states. More on that by François Koch, and he will also elaborate further on the NATO Innovation Fund, which is a 1 billion venture capital fund which supports dual-use technologies for startups and SMEs in emerging disruptive technologies. Besides these different initiatives where we are active, we have also developed since 2023 a second stream, which enables our industry and research to integrate the European defense value chain. This is via international industry partnerships, which can be bilateral or multilateral, and most of all in view of R&D or R&T collaborations. Here we can typically mention the agreement or the collaboration agreement that we signed in June at the Paris Air Show together with the Belgium Security and Defense Industry Association, as well as the colleagues from the Netherlands, where we basically declare that we want to collaborate more closely on defense, notably when it comes to space, cyber, and novel materials. And this is directly translated into specific events, Benelux for defense, events like cyber for defense and space for defense that we are organizing throughout the year, and also with dedicated matchmaking possibilities. This is something we do already very closely with the Benelux, mostly due to the fact that on Army side, there's already existing collaborations. But of course, we want to further improve this also on the industry side. And the same goes also for France and Italy, where we are elaborating specific actions throughout 2024. Then just for the last part, it's about promotion of Luxembourg industry and research defense capabilities at international level. So here together with the relevant partners of Trade and Invest, so the Chamber of Commerce, the Ministry of Economy, and also relevant organizations from the Luxembourg ecosystem, we participate with the Luxembourg industry to dedicated defense fairs. So to be noted is the Cybersecurity and Defense Forum in Lille, which will be in March 2024, and where we will have a Luxembourgish pavilion organized by the Luxembourg House of Cybersecurity, and Luxinnovation, together with the Chamber of Commerce, will be in charge of organizing the International Industry Delegation Program, including also the Cyber for Defense Benelux event, which Rebecca will refer to later on. Then there's the Eurosatory. This is the biggest EU defense fair in Europe. This is happening next June in Paris. It's addressing all defense domains. And this is a collaboration between Luxembourg Directorate of Defense, the Chamber of Commerce, and Luxinnovation. Will have a pavilion of 150 square meters and the possibility for 20 companies to exhibit their capabilities. Then looking up to 2025, we'll be back at the International Paris Air Show, which is addressing space and air components of defense. And this is something we organize together with the Ministry of Economy, the Luxembourg Space Agency, and the Chamber of Commerce. And then last but not least, we are also looking, of course, outside of the EU, notably at the UK and the allied member states. And there's another big fair, the DSEI, which we'll be targeting in September 2025. So with this, I would like to give over the speech to my colleague Rebecca Damotte to introduce the concept of the Joint Defense Call Initiative.
Thanks, Alex, and good morning to all. So I'm Rebecca Damotte, and I joined Alex to work on the defense activities at Luxinnovation and to support you navigate this world. So you'll have to go to the next slide. So I will talk to you about the Joint Defense Call Initiative. Many of you must be familiar with it because there was a first edition back in 2022. This initiative has been launched because there have been several needs identified. The first one is that from the EU member states, from the EU status, the EU member states have to invest 2% of their defense effort into research and development. Thus, the Directorate of Defense, the Ministry of Economy, Ministry of Higher Education and Research, through the FNR, the National Research Fund, and Luxinnovation, they are collaborating to create this Joint Defense Call Initiative. On the side of the Direction of Defense, the aim of the Joint Call is first to get closer to the budgetary objectives of the 2% of the defense spending to research and development, but also to offer national actors the possibility to have a first experience in the defense domain, as it's quite recent here in Luxembourg. The aim also of the call is to support the policy orientation of the Defense Directorate. So first to support the development of dual-use technologies. So when we talk about the Joint Defense Call, we will talk only about dual-use technologies, with also the aim to have benefits for the national ecosystem. And then also the call will stimulate research development of new technology, but mostly the spillover of civil technologies into the defense sector, and then vice versa, maybe the spillover from the defense sector, from the new technology created into then the civil sector. Of great importance is also the aim to support the green transition in the national economy, but also in the defense domain, and then to position strategically the economy and the research in the defense value chain here in Luxembourg. Next one. So briefly on last year edition of the Joint Defense Call, you will have a link to the web page where you can find this information and how it was structured. So the call targeted space and materials domain, targeted national companies and national research organizations with a budget of 9.5 million, of which 4.5 was allocated to the Fonds de l'Innovation from the Ministry of Economy and 5 million to the Fonds National Fonds National de la Recherche. And the aim or the project funded through the Joint Defense Call can last for a maximum of 3 years. 60 projects had been proposed in the phase 1. 22 from these 60 have been retained for the phase 2, and finally only 13 projects have been retained for funding, with 5 in the material domain and 8 in the space. On the next slide, you will see the winners, so the different companies and institutes that have been funded. There has been a press conference in July where you have on the Ministry of Defense website, you have the list of all the projects and companies, so you can have a look for more details, also to know a bit more on the topics and project proposed and supported. So for 2024, we need to look at the developments that have happened since 2022. On the policy side, it's a direct link to the international development. So from the European Union, there has been a publication, the Strategic Compass for the European Union. It follows the strategies from the European Union on climate change, on space, cyber, critical infrastructure in defense. So it follows the policies for the broader world, and they are applied into the defense domain. There's also stronger collaboration between the European Union and NATO on the topics of military mobility, resilience, protection of critical infrastructure, emerging disruptive technologies, the security implication of climate change, space is also here again, and then foreign information manipulation and interference. And then on the side of the European Defence Agency, they have published some weeks ago now, it's very recent, the EU Capability Development Priorities of 2023, and that targets the domain of land, air, space, and cyber. And in terms of technology of interest for us is military mobility, critical infrastructure protection, energy security, persistent and resilience, C4ISR. Then on the national level, on the next slide, the defense strategies that are also feeding in the joint call and the different potential call for proposal. You have the Luxembourg Cyber Defense Strategy, the Defense Space Strategy, and the Luxembourg Defense Guideline 2035 that have been published over the last 3 years. And they are with the European policies presented earlier, the basis of the joint call on which this one is set up. Then also the joint call will reflect the priorities of Luxembourg in the economy and research domain, especially in the space, cyber, automobility, material and clean tech sectors. So now on the joint call 2024, it has been announced in the press conference in July with the winners of the 2022 edition. So it will be the second edition with a budget of 13.8 million euros for research development in dual-use technologies, always still a joint initiative between the Luxembourg Directorate of Defense, the NECO, the MESER, Ministry of Higher Education and Research, and the FMA and Luxinnovation. It targets national companies, private companies, and national public institutes, and it targets the domains of space, cyber, land, and air. And this time it will not be on space and materials, but we have 3 verticals that are the smart mobility, the resilience infrastructure, and strategic foresight and climate change adaptation in the domain of space, cyber, land, and air for these 3 verticals. We have one slide still, which is the generic timeline to give you an idea how it will take place in time. So the launch of the call is foreseen for Q1, Q2 2024. And from the month 0, when the call will be launched, you will have 2 months to submit your project outline. So this is the first phase, phase 1. And then there will be a month approximately to get feedback if the phase 1 is accepted to go in phase 2 or not. And then from the go, no-go of phase 1, you will have approximately 2.5 months to submit the phase 2, which is the full proposal, project proposal. From that moment, there will be approximately 2 months until the FNR gives the first results, and then there will be the State Aid Commission of the MECO, will also validate on their side the allocation of the funding on the project retained, and the signature and launch of the project is foreseen 11 months after the launch of the call. So this is the generic timeline. Of course, once the official launch date of the call will be known, there will be webinars, info session to inform you of the process more in details, especially on the eligibility criteria and how to submit, etc. But this, we will keep in touch with you to give you the information. And this concludes the joint call. If you have questions, we can get them at the end, I think. And so now on the European Defence Agency.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rebecca. So indeed, there will be plenty of time also at the end of the session to address questions. So we propose to go now to the next session, which will be on the European Defence Agency. So unfortunately, Julia Silverio is not available today, so I will take on his slides and provide an overview of what can be done for industry and research within the European Defence Agency. First, maybe just an introduction. What is the European Defence Agency? So it's an intergovernmental agency of the Council of the European Union. It was established in 2004, and it has been designed to serve as a prioritization instrument to develop the defense capabilities for the EU, but it most of all also cooperation forum for technology and capability development, where it is acting as a military interface between member states and EU-wide policies. So the European Defence Agency is managed, so to say, by the 27 defense ministers, plus the head of the agency, Josep Borrell. And together they have a staff of 180 people, which are dedicated to 4 departments, which we will see afterwards. We have today the 27 member states, which are part of the EDA. So indeed, Denmark has also joined the EDA due to the context, geopolitical context. And there's also administrative arrangements with Norway, Serbia, Switzerland, and Ukraine, which can actively participate in various R&T initiatives. Just here to show you that the European Defence Agency has basically 4 pillars. One is dedicated to research, technology, and innovation, and this is the one that we will address within the next slides, which is open, basically a framework for research and technology defense collaborations. But important also to say that there's the Capability, Armament, and Planning Directorate, which manages typically procurement challenges also for the EDA. To be noted, for instance, GovSat, the satellite from Luxembourg, the government satellite, who is working a lot with this directorate when it comes to pooling and sharing of capabilities within the EU defense member states. And there's also other directives which are looking more at synergies with the European Commission or with NATO, and this is addressed in the Industry Synergies and Enablers Directorate. So the CapTechs, that's the ones that we are looking here in this session. What are the CapTechs? So first of all, it's a collaboration between industries and research that is validated by Ministry of Defense. So basically, to keep it very simple, it's a framework that enables the creation of collaborative defense projects, which can range from approximately 1.5 to 4 million euros, and which are fully funded by the MODs. There are 15 capability technology working groups, and these working groups are basically a platform where MODs can connect with the defense technology community, technical experts from the EU 27 member states, as well as representatives from industry and research. Within this CAPTEX, there's two approaches, the top-down and the bottom-up approach, to propose project proposals that meet the needs which are defined in the EU Capability Development Plan. So as you see on the right side, this EU Capability Development Plan has been published in November 2023, and it shows the 22 priorities which the EU defense needs to address in order to strengthen its defense capabilities. Then just a statistic also within its CAPTEX, 15 to 20 projects are endorsed each year, and this with an overall value of 50 to 80 million euros. So here we see the 15 CAPTEX which are today operational, plus also consultation fora which are addressed by the European Defence Agency. So what I would like to mention here is that you have the 5 capability domains of defense, so cyber, space, air, sea and land, which you addressed, but also on top of that priority research areas such as simulation, information superiority, materials, components and modules, CBRN or electronics, and last but not least, also as Rebecca mentioned already, green defense, which we can see through CAPTEC Energy and Environment, but also the consultation for sustainability energy in defense. These are 2 components which are increasing a lot, also, and which are also very relevant for the Joint Defense Corps that will be coming up next year. So the CAPTEX itself, how are they structured? Basically, there is a project officer from the European Defence Agency called CAPTEC Moderator, which will manage the whole community on a specific subject. You have the representatives of the member states, which are representatives of the Ministries of Defence. So in our case, it's Julia Silverio, Blanca Alfaro, and also Aslis Guérin from the Directorate of Defence. Then we have governmental experts from public research centers or from trusted partners. So in our case, it's Luxinnovation, which is taking this lead as CAPTEC governmental expert. And then we have, of course, representatives from the private entities, but also from research organizations, which would be the Luxembourg Technology and Innovation Community. So all these actors sit together on the same table, and they define together the strategic research agendas of the CAPTEC working group, but also the projects that will be defined in order to meet the needs of the capability development plan. Now, there's certain particularities to the CAPTEX. Indeed, once you are part of this CAPTEC group, and which goes, of course, upon validation by the Luxembourg Director of Defense, you are basically a trusted partner of the Ministry of Defense. So as such, there's no competition. Whenever 2 member states decide to jointly set up a project within the CAPTEC group, which needs, of course, to be approved also by the EDA steering board with the 27 member states. But once you're in this group, you can basically get into this project upon validation and selection by the Director of Defense. So this is already a very important point for the CAPTEX. But on the other side, I think this is really very relevant for the CAPTEX. You find within these groups the prime contractors and the Ministries of Defense in relevant topics all around the same table. So it is also an ideal platform to exchange directly with them, notably also in view of the flagship projects that are presented in the European Defence Fund. Now, how to become a CAPTEC member? So far, of course, it's very important that whenever you go into this CAPTEX, you are also available, both in terms of resources, financial and human resources, to follow up on these initiatives. So if you have, it's important that you have already substance in Luxembourg. It's due diligence that we do with Luxinnovation, based also on the experience that we have in all the various innovation, research and technology initiatives that we follow already on the civil side. Moreover, then it's important that we can identify technological competences and know-how which are relevant for defense. And what is always of an added value is, of course, that you have already established trusted relationships within the Luxembourg innovation ecosystem. So this can be with the Luxembourg economy or with the Luxembourg research. And nevertheless, and it's very important, the final validation to integrate a CapTech group goes through the Luxembourg Directorate of Defense. Then here just an overview of the EDA CapTechs, which we are operational at the moment. So these are 10 out of the 15. And this gives you an overview of how many actors we have in each of the CapTechs. So within the CapTech space, this is certainly the CapTech where we have most members at the moment, but we have also seen increasing participations in CapTech Land, CapTech Energy and Environment, CapTech Materials, and other CapTechs, such as CapTech Cyber and Simulation, which are becoming more and more relevant. Here to say, nevertheless, all the CapTechs are open, and then really depending on what is your know-how and your technologies, which can be relevant for defense, we can have, of course, a discussion with you or also directly with the European Defense Agency to verify which CapTechs could be relevant for you. Then also to show you that there's really a dedicated effort from both Luxinnovation and the Directorate of Defense to the European Defense Agency initiatives, we have decided to host each year 2 meetings of the CapTechs in Luxembourg. We have done this in 2023 for both the space and the cyber community in defense. So for the CapTech space in June, we had over 100 representatives from the EU defense industry, Ministry of Defense active in space, and over 70 participants for the cyber community. This was also in June. For 2024, we have planned to host the CapTech Materials, which will be in June 2024, as well as the CapTech Energy and Environment. And then it's still to be decided for 2025, CapTech Land and CapTech Air, which are 2 components which are increasing rapidly in terms of importance, also for the Luxembourg Army. This might be then also addressed for hosting them in Luxembourg. So this brings me to the end of the EDA presentation. As said before, if there's any specific questions, we will address them later on. And I would then give over now to Azilis Guerra.
Hello. Yes, I hear it now. Fine. Good morning, everyone. Yes, this picture is quite outdated, actually. Maybe you should get a new one. I will handle that. So many thanks for inviting me here. We can go to the first slide, or is it me that is going to? Thank you. So good morning, everyone. My name is Azilis Guerra. I am the EDF, European Defence Fund National Delegate. I am from the Directorate of Defence, but I'm sitting in Brussels to be closer to where it's actually happening. So if we go back to the first slide, exactly. For those of you who know what the EDF is, I'm sorry, you will need a bit of patience here. And for those who don't know what the EDF is, we will spend quite some minutes on this slide because it tells actually very much about the European Defence Fund. So the European Defence Fund is a industrial funding program. So it's not addressed to member states or to specific organizations. It's really really made for companies and research organizations in Europe. It is the fact that it's a European funding program also means that it is covered by the EU budget. So from the overall EU budget, and it also means that it's the European Commission that is managing the fund. very similarly, and it is the case in for Horizon 2020 or Horizon Europe for those who know these programs. So the European Defence Fund entered into force in 2021 for a duration of 7 years. This is because the multi-annual financial framework of the EU is covering 7 years. So as Alex already touched on, we are going to discuss an EDF 2.0 starting in 2028. Discussions are already ongoing, and let's see what the future will bring. But for now, we still have 4 years to go on the current EDF. So as you can see on this very slide, the EDF is divided into two main categories, the research and the capability category, but it actually really focuses on research and development. So obviously the acquisition part is something that will step in much later, because to be able to acquire something, you need for the product that was researched and developed to be fit for market, which is not yet the case for any of the projects that were funded in through the European Defence Fund. So the difference here between research and development, and we'll get back to that later, is that the research window is completely 100% funded by the European Commission, by the EDF. So you would just submit your proposals as it is in Horizon 2020 or any other EU funding program that you might know. And for the development window, so the one here in the middle, you can see that the colors are split between green and what is it, violet, lila, which means that there is a co-funding dimension. So your project, in order to get the funding of the EU Commission, will need to prove that it already gets, or that it will get funding from the member state. We will get back to that as well. As for the budgets, as Alex already said as well, it's 8 billion over 7 years. So it might seem quite a lot said like that, but just to give you an idea, Horizon Europe is 100 billion over 7 years. So there is no comparison, and 8 billion is a rather modest sum when it needs to tackle development of military capabilities. But it's been a first shot, and I mean, it was also the objective was also to see whether it would work. When back then it was developed in 2018-19, and I think now we can definitely say that it works because the last actually three, the 3 first years of the EDF are considered being a huge success, and also showed through the fact that the budget is actually melting. So it was planned to have 1.15 billion per year, but we keep on front loading, taking budget from the years to come because we need more budget every year. So let's see if we can manage to have some extra funds for the remaining years. Probably that will be the case, but in any sense, it is, as for the Commission and the member states, for now a program that is actually working very well. Next slide, please. Or is it? Can I? No. Okay. So this is to show you what the EDF is about. So every year, the member states and the Commission elaborates what's called a work program. So it's a document that is publicly accessible, that describes all the topics and all the budgets that are put at your disposal, at the companies and RTO's disposal in a given year. So what you see on the screen here was the work program, let's say, for 2023. It tells you that out of the 15 main categories, in addition, you have the disruptive technologies category and the SME category. From all these categories, you have different topics that are tackled. So these topics don't just fall off the sky. They are actually really been worked on by the member state. We elaborate them based on capability development priorities, based on what the European Defence Agency issues, based on a huge amount of documents and insights that tell us that For instance, next year we will need to work on tactical air pass, as it is here in the 4th line. So this is not randomly picked. There is a logic behind it. And topics might come back year after year, or might come back twice or 3 times. It might never come back at all. This is what you will be able to see in the multi-annual planning, what's it called? Planning perspective, which is not here in the slides, but as a follow-on to the to this WebEx, maybe we can hand in this information to you, to Luxinnovation. I'm not promising too much. So what you need to know is that this work program is your key to participating in the EDF, because it tells you exactly on what you are invited to work on and for how much funds you can actually submit a project. And this work program is usually published every spring. Next year will be around 15th of March. This is not an official information, of course, but it should be around that date. And you then have about 6 months to submit your project proposals. And then there's the whole evaluation by the Commission and so on. We will get that in the next slide. But what I would still tell you about the previous slide, but it's fine, is that the thing that you need to keep in mind as a contrast to what Alex said on the EDA part is that here competition is rule. Competition is sacred. So unfortunately, competition is getting tougher every year. And to give you an example, this year we exploded all the records because the Commission actually received, I think it was more than 230 project proposals for the EDF 2023 calls. So 230 project proposals for just 1 billion euros. This is not that much. So in the end, we can, let's say that approximately 40 to 50 projects will be selected only. So yes, next slide, please. Very quick, how is it working? This is the standard timeline that the Commission has in its EDF Info Days as well. It basically shows you that from on the very left side, when the work program and the calls for proposals are prepared and then published. Oh, it actually says here March. Well, so yes, it will probably be published in March. When the calls for proposals are published, from that moment on, you have approximately, it depends, but approximately 6 months to submit your proposals. It seems much compared to the Defense National joint call, but it's not that much because you need to team up. You need to find partners, you need to team up with companies, with RTOs, you need to elaborate your project proposal. If it is a development project, you need to have your MOD in the loop to secure the funding and so on. So it's a tough procedure, especially with the summer months in between it. But it is possible somehow. Once you submit your proposals, the selection process will run for approximately 6 months again. So we're now already way over the timeline for the national joint defense calls, as you can see. So 6 months submission deadline, 6 months evaluation, which means that approximately 1 year and 2 months later, approximately 14 months later, you will actually know whether your project succeeded or not. And you will then have another 6 months to fulfill the grant agreement procedure with the Commission. So it's not an 11-month, as Rebecca said, that your project can start. It will be, it's rather 1.5 years and maybe a little less, maybe a little more, but that's grosso modo the idea. Next slide, please. The funding, which is, of course, probably the second most important part here. Again, if you're doing a research action, they call it an action in the Commission, research project, you can do it all by your own. You can team up with your partners, elaborate something, hand it in. You don't need any MOD for that. you are going to be funded by the European Defence Fund 100% if you are selected. So this is the good news. The bad news is that, of course, there are way more research projects that are submitted than development projects, but that's another issue. On the development action sides, as said before, you will need to have a co-funding. This is because the development costs a lot more than research. Most of you know that. And the Commission cannot fund 100% of all the development projects. There are many reasons to that, but one probably is that otherwise we'd have just a couple of projects funded, and the objective of the EDF is to have a large amount of projects and companies being supported. So in order to resolve that issue, the Commission has set up a funding rate baseline, as you can see in the green table. The less funded is the prototyping, because that's what costs the most. And so if you do a prototyping project, you will need to secure, a priori, 80% of the remaining funding, which will be lowered by all the bonuses that you can get. I'm not speaking specifically about that here, but just know that there are bonuses that can enable you to increase the baseline funding rate of 5, 10, 15%, or even 20, I guess. So all you need to know here is that the remaining part that is not covered by the Commission and by the bonuses and so on needs to be brought from somewhere. So in case your MOD doesn't bring the funding, because obviously an MOD cannot fund everything that is put on its table, then you can still bring the funding. I know it's not as sexy as having it funded by the MOD and the Commission, but it is a solution that is also very much used. You can also fund other solutions, but the most important thing for the Commission is you have to prove that your project is funded 100%. Next slide, please. Why should you participate? Bit kitsch here, but of course 8 billion reasons to participate in it. But moreover, the most important thing is that really it will open your network to domains that you probably have not yet experienced. And the fact that defense supply chains are very much closed, at least much more than most of the civilian supply chains, is because the defense supply chains often work on reputation, on image recognition, and so on. So once that you actually manage to get into the supply chain, it can have a lot of positive impacts on your company's activities. You will widen your network. You will engage in a new type of European projects with new companies. Maybe you thought that for now your company, your SME, engaging with Airbus maybe was in the stars. And through the EDF, this is actually more than possible, because also companies like Airbus or Indra, Rheinmetall, all these huge ones, they need SMEs from Luxembourg, from other countries. So this is actually the opportunity to get into that domain, and also because, as said here, I mean, there are little extras, little bonuses, like you can benefit from a special coaching offered by the Commission once you're selected, only if your project actually wins. But that will change in the future, so everybody will be able to apply for SME coaching by the Commission. You can participate in a huge amount of activities organized by the Commission in the frame of the EDF, and so on. Next slide, please. And this is, I think, the last one. To give you an idea, because now probably you'll say, okay, that's fine. The MOD tells us how great the EDF is, and they're 8 billions and wonderful, but now I know what that means for me. I can make new partners. Great, but how's it actually been until now? The fact is that the MOD had to how should I say, it was new for the MOD as well. And we're called the Defense Directorate, but the EDF was a whole new thing for us because before 2018, we barely did some defense R&D and so on. And most of you know. So we had to get into it as well. And what we can see here is that actually 2021, the very first year of the European Defence Fund, we accepted to support to co-fund 4 projects that we selected out of approximately 13, but the 13 also include the research ones. So so we did actually select 4 to be co-funded. 1 year later, it's been increased to 6, and this year in 2023, again we co-fund 6 project proposals with Luxembourgish companies. But the essential thing is look at the budget that we consent to put into it. The first year, we acknowledged about 300,000 euros in our companies to support the projects. And the year after, it was more than 4 times more. And then this year, let's say if all the 6 projects that we decided to support are selected, then this will make Luxembourg co-fund 2.8 million euros in the European Defence Fund for 2023, which is, I mean, we're Luxembourg, so it's a very great figure. I think we're trying our best, and which also means that this is going crescendo, and that we also need you to submit your project proposals so that this investment that we decide to do now in the European Defence Fund, which is in you, because we don't invest in the European Defence Fund because it's already our budget that is taken to fund it, but we invest in you. In the SMEs and the RTOs, we invest in to support you with Luxinnovation so that you can thrive in your European business expansion. And so, as you can see, is that from those that had submitted the project in 21 and 22, actually 5 projects got selected every year. We hope that this year, out of the 12 submitted, at least 12, because some actually don't tell us, so we don't know. And we know it's a minimum of 12 project proposals submitted this year. We hope that it will be more than 5. And yes, for 2024, I have not prepared any slide about this, but again, just the main information for you is that the work program will be available for you around 15-ish March next year, and from there on, Luxinnovation and the Defense Directorate will liaise to organize the usual. I suppose, Alex, I'm looking at you, but we'll organize the usual EDF Info Day. You can also maybe note that the European Commission Info Day, which is a 2-day event, usually a huge thing for networking and so on, where one really needs to subscribe and register very fast. This Info Day should take place around end of May this year, so 1 month earlier than up until now. So it's not public yet, but it should be around the last week of May, so that you know as a heads up. And anyways, Luxinnovation will be giving you all this information in due time. If there's any questions, very happy to answer. I hope this was clear, and feel free to put your hand up. I see some already. Thank you very much. I think this was the last slide, but maybe you can check. Yes, it was. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Aziz. And indeed, so I saw there was a question, but I would propose just to take it at the end of the sessions. We still have a presentation by François Koch from the permanent presentation for Luxembourg to NATO. And just also to conclude on what Aziz was saying, so indeed, European Defence Fund is competitive. The durations can be long until the funding starts, but it's really about the European flagship programs. It's about maximum commitment of the EU member states. And you have, of course, also Luxinnovation as a national focal point to support you through all this process. And I think this is also important to say, all the initiatives that we are presenting you today are interconnected. So whatever network you might build up at the Joint Defence Corps level or in the European Defence Agency will also serve later on for the European Defence Fund. So this brings us to then the last presentation and before the outlook on the 2024 activities. And this will be by François Koch from the Permanent Presentation to NATO. François, the floor is yours.
François, you're muted. You need to unmute somewhere on the computer.
Ready?
Yeah, better. Thanks.
Thought I was online. Okay, am I now? Okay,
Yeah.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah,
All
you
good.
can.
Oh, okay, all good. Excellent. So, as I was saying, I understand you had quite a busy morning already. So I will try to save you from death by PowerPoint, and just walk you through some slides that I prepared for you this morning. So, just as a general remark, today our focus lies on the concrete funding initiatives that were launched at NATO for tech. Obviously, there's also a policy dimension to the tech work at NATO, but we're not gonna cover that today. Okay, so excellent. So basically, at NATO, there's two fairly new main initiatives. The one being the Diana Startup Accelerator, and the other one being the NATO Innovation Fund, the NIF. So, as I said, this is fairly new. It's both initiatives are about 1 year old, all in all. So, for both initiatives, we're seeing what we're seeing now is a pilot phase, which is quite interesting because it gives us an indication of how both of these initiatives are going to work in the coming years. So, a few general points that account for both initiatives. At NATO, we focus on 9 main priorities in terms of technologies. These are AI, autonomy, quantum technologies, biotech, hypersonics, new space technologies, novel materials, energy propulsion, and next generation communication systems. So the general focus here at NATO is also lies between TRL 3 and 6, going up to 7 in the case of Diana. So the clear focus for both initiatives is on dual use / defense technologies, of course. I would then go to the next slide, please. Thank you very much. So here in front of you, you have the core features of both Diana and the NIF. So Diana is basically your typical startup accelerator. It focuses on novel deep tech focused technology. So anything that's emerging and that is foreseen to have a big impact on society in the future. So it basically is a network of accelerators. The accelerators are set up in the different NATO allied countries. So there's 32 of them now, 31, soon to be 32, sorry. Still waiting on the final approval on Sweden. So next to this accelerator network, you have a test center network, which is constituted of test labs that are also spread around the NATO allied countries. Just as general information, Luxembourg is going to take part, is going to be present in this network starting end of December, this coming December. So this is great news for us, of course. The main site is going to be managed by the ESRIC. Sorry, by the Technoport, obviously. Sorry for that. So, but Diana is wider than that. It also has a rapid adoption service. So, of course, one of the main goals of Diana is not only to accelerate startups, but really to provide a way to, in the end, procure new materials to the warfighter on the field. So NATO, Diana is actually a NATO body. So all of the NATO allies are participating in Diana. So that's one of the big differences with the NATO Innovation Fund. So let's now switch to the fund side. So the fund is a 1 billion euro multi-sovereign venture capital fund. So it is privately managed. it operates under market principles. It will focus both on direct investment and indirect investment. Direct investment meaning investing in startups, and indirect investment meaning investing in funds that are already investing in deep tech. So the participation there is on a voluntary basis. So this means we currently have 23 allies taking part. Next slide, please. Excellent. So this is the Diana challenge cycle. So it all starts with the strategic direction development, which is the moment where the Diana, the NATO communities come together to give inputs and demand signals. So you would have the military authorities taking part to the discussion. You would also have the political communities, obviously, and the allies as well. But it would also have, and this is quite interesting, the NATO scientific community, and namely the STO. So at this stage, when the goal is to define the strategic direction, allies have a right to discuss and the priorities. So that's actually the main phase where allies get to discuss the direction Diana is going towards. So then we enter. This is a phase that happens twice a year. So twice a year, there's going to be a new strategic direction that's going to be defined by the Diana team here at NATO. So now we enter the second phase. The second phase is the challenge call for proposals. It is critical to underline that stage purely relies on the Diana team. So the decision making entirely rests with the Diana team. So there's no way an ally can take part into that discussion. Why is that? Of course, because it would be difficult to manage the political debates that would go with that. So how a bit about just a bit about the timelines now. So it generally takes about 3 months to define the challenges. So that's supposed that takes about 3 months. And then after that, once the call is issued, then you have about 2 months to register and propose your candidacy. So let's now go to the down selection. That down selection happens in two steps. So maybe we could go to the next slide if you don't mind. Yeah, perfect. That's the timeline. So as I said, this is how the challenge timeline looked this year. So we have, as you see, we have the call for proposals in mid-June, and then we had the call closed by the 25th of August, and then we had the start of the challenge by December, with 2 phases in the down selection. I take it some of you sitting in the room or online have been participating to that first pilot phase. You'll confirm later. So what does Diana bring? So Diana brings you a classic, typical startup accelerator scheme. 2 rounds. Phase 1, 100K within a period that extends to 6 months. Usually you would have a group of 30 startups. A down selection after the 6 first months, and then entering a second phase where you would have 300K per startup, and again a period of time of 6 months, and that would usually be a group of 3 to 6 startups that get to mature and demonstrate their technology and scale up. And so the whole process would take about a year, all in all. After that, of course, is also where Diana gets interesting, since this would be the moment where a type of technology, a tool, would then be presented to the allies, and actually you would have the rapid adoption process starting from there, and trying to have this fit to market elements. So could now go to the next slide, please. That's right. So these were the first pilot phase challenges for 23. So as you see, we had sensing and surveillance, energy resilience, secure information sharing. So to give you a bit of a feedback, early feedback, we had about 1,300 applications. Sorry, I'm just lost you. Give me a second. All right. So we had 1,300 applications and 44 companies selected in the end. So that's about a 3% something selection rate, which is really difficult, of course. These companies these startups, selected startups, will now enter the Diana scheme, so which will, as I said before, last about a year. The companies that haven't been selected will get feedback soon, and of course are free and invited to reapply in the future. In Luxembourg, we had about 4 to 5 startups applying this time around. We didn't make it through this time, but we certainly will the next time around. So I would invite all of you that have been taking part to the pilot phase to, of course, reapply to the next once the next challenge is published, and that's going to be in a few months from now. Next slide, please. So the Diana Strategic Direction 24 and beyond. So yes, the Diana team is holding workshops right now to develop the focus areas that are going to be published. Starting 24. We should be talking about spring 24. So yeah, March to probably June maybe. So the draft 24-25 strategic direction is going to be presented to the Diana Board of Directors in early 24. So you should be getting a sense of the wide areas of focus by, let's say, February, March. So the next round of challenges is going to be around where there's going to be 5 challenges next year. So that's more than this pilot phase where we only had 3. But once the full operating capability is achieved for Diana as a whole in around 25, we're going to be having up to 10 challenges per year. So that's, of course, gives us better chances to make it to the selection process, which is good news. I will now go to the next slide, and we would then be moving to the NATO Innovation Fund. So what are the NIF objectives? The NIF objectives are, first of all, allied adoption, commercial success, since it's a fund, and capacity building in the long term. Let's go to the next one. So the NIF in a nutshell, as I said before, the NIF is a multi-sovereign venture capital fund, 1 billion euros capital over 15 years. It is following market principles as a traditional fund. It is privately managed completely, so by a managing team of professionals. The managing partner is Andrea Traversone, who was previously the managing director at Amadeus Capital. For some of you might know the firm. It is, of course, domiciled in Luxembourg, which is great for us, under the supervision of the CSSF. As I said before, the initial runtime is 15 years. That's for subfund 1. So the NIF currently in its form has 1 subfund, which is the NIF, but it might, when time allows and whenever there's appetite for it, develop into different other subfunds. As I said, if there is appetite from the allies participating and probably going down a thematic route, so it could be concentrated on one specific technology, let's say AI, for example. But that's going to be for later. As I said before, the fund is doing direct investment and indirect investment as well. It has a clear deep tech focus, so transformative technologies with a big impact on our societies in the future. It concentrates on early stage investments and follow on if necessary, but its main mandate is really to focus on early stage. Of course, it is the management team is going to look at balancing the investments in terms of geography in order to cover all equities. So that's the 23 allies participating. Here again, it is key to mention that allies themselves have no say when it comes to the investments that are going to be made by the investment team. This is a team of professionals, and the responsibility lies and the mandate lies with them and not the allies. Again, to avoid any difficult political debates here at NATO. So I think I mentioned it before already, but one of the main differences between Diana and the fund also has to do with their forms. So the first one, Diana, being a NATO body, where all of NATO is participating, where the NIF is really a private entity that is working on a voluntary basis. So there's 23 of the 31 allies taking part for now. It could grow in the future. So what's the difference? Diana, so I've mentioned some differences before, but of course it's always important to mention that Diana has a bit of a product focused dimension, where the NIF is more of an innovative focused tool. So what's the connection? Startups in the fund's portfolio may produce solutions to challenge programs within Diana. So it could well be that a startup that has been funded by the NIF would find it interesting to apply to the Diana scheme. That's certainly an important link there. And then, of course, it also works the other way around. So startups in Diana Challenge programs may be attractive for investment by the fund, of course. So I would now go to the next slide, if I may. Yes, okay. So I guess it is the key question. How do we apply? Diana. So for Diana, it is more of a classical procedure that most of you know from different types of schemes that already exist. So you register your interest with Luxinnovation and myself as a BOD POC, so Board of Directors Diana POC, to stay updated of the whole process and where the Diana team is at. And then whenever, of course, the challenge are published, you just apply. Of course, Alexander and myself will be ready to help you with that in case of questions. So as I said before, it takes about 3 months to do the selection once the candidacies are in. The candidacy process itself, the registering process itself, takes about 2 months. Yeah. So what does it consist of? You have to provide the Diana team with your usual deck, right? Graphs and a bit of background on the startup. So let's now switch to the NIF, where it is quite different. The NIF, as I said before, is not a Diana body, so it is a private entity, private fund. So the register process there is very different. There's no formal process there, but rather it works through introduction to the team, to the management team, through the national NIF representative, which is myself. And of course, I work with Alexander for this in order to help our ecosystem get to know the management team. So here again, it is quite critical that you register your interest with Luxinnovation and myself, so that we know that you're interested and we get to connect you to the management team. Yeah, so just the last point I forgot to mention in my PowerPoint, which is that, of course, we are at NATO, so there is one main political caveat that needs to be mentioned up front, which is, of course, that the NIF fund management team, as well as the Diana team, will be looking at the types of funding the applying startups have been getting in the past. So obviously, they're going to be looking at Chinese connections, Russian connections, Iran connections, and North Korean connections. Well, I suppose these are less frequent. Yeah, that would be all on my side for now. I stand ready to answer any questions on your side. I'll put the contact details on the PowerPoint and the websites for both.
Great, I think we lost Francois, but we were also at the end of this presentation, so I'd like to already thank him, and I hope he can join again for the question and answers at the end of the session. So yeah, this ends the presentations on the initiatives. Now this is of course a lot of information for you, but I would like to stress out here again this collaboration we have between the Directorate of Defense and Luxinnovation. So with Luxinnovation, we are really there to support you on all these different initiatives, and of course also to together with the Directorate of Defense and to navigate through all these different initiatives that can be available for defense innovation. Now let's have an outlook on the 2024 activities. First, I'd like to give some highlights, notably for February, where we'll have practically a week dedicated to space in defense, starting with the 19th of February, where we'll have our second edition of the Benelux Space for Defense Industry Day. So this is an event that we organized already in the beginning of this year, back to back with the GovSatCom conference, and which is the direct product of our collaboration with the Belgium and Netherlands Defense Industry Associations under direct support of the Ministries of Defense of these three countries. And this will be dedicated to space capabilities for defense with industry matchmakings, presentations of high-level representatives of DDA and the European Commission, and of course, the industry of the three countries. Next to this, also in Brussels, will be taking place the first NATO Space Weavers Industry Day. And this is also directly connected to a new platform that NATO has been setting up under the NATO Industry Advisor Group, which is led here in Luxembourg by Philippe Glesner of SAS Space and Defense, and with Luxinnovation also as a deputy seat on this. And this Defense Weavers Industry Day on Space will also be in Brussels and will bring together all the space industries of the NATO allied member states in order to address challenges. And we invite you, of course, to come to Brussels for both these days to get a full perspective on national EU and NATO initiative challenges and foresight activities. And eventually also mentioned to complete this Space Week is the GovSat conference, which will be on the 22nd of February. So it's Luxembourg's EU Security and Defense Conference with focus on space, and all space relevant capabilities will be addressed. So SATCOM, cyber in space, Earth observation, and so on. Then there will be in March a week for cyber defense. So here, as mentioned before, we are collaborating with the Luxembourg Cause of Cybersecurity and Luxembourg Trade Invest to set up the national pavilion at the Cybersecurity Forum in Lille. This will be a quite interesting day because we are also organizing in this context a Benelux Cyber for Defense initiative, which will be on the 27th of March, and in presence also of the Ministries of Defense of Belgium or Luxembourg. So it will be very high level meeting, and we are very much looking also there to a big support and participation of our Luxembourgish industry and research. On top of this, as we do for all the defense fairs, we will also have a dedicated industry delegation program, which enables you then also to participate on 1 or 2 days to the forum. And then last but not least, so Eurosatory, as mentioned also earlier, this is really the big EU defense fair. We'll have a quite important presence with a pavilion of 150 square meters. As said before, so up to 20 companies which can exhibit, but also here a dedicated industry delegation program where you will be able to meet with prime contractors, representatives from other MODs and industries and research players which are relevant for defense. And you're of course all invited to join this big event, which will be in June from 17 to 21 of June. And connected to this, again, the defense catalog. So this is really important in the sense that it provides you visibility. It's a way of promoting also your capabilities. It will be exposed also on the Luxembourg pavilion at the Eurosatory. And we will be launching soon the process to catch all the information. So Rebecca will be leading this on Luxinnovation side. It will go out in the newsletter with dedicated emails, and we'll ask you to provide all the relevant information by end of February, and there will of course be more information on that very soon. Then just a general outlook on all the activities which are taking place until June 2024. So there's a lot of relevant conferences, the ones we mentioned already on space and cyber in February and March, but also other ones like the EU Space Conference in January, as well as the EDA Conference on Smart Swarming Technologies in Saint-Louis, which is close to Basel, and which will be dedicated to all these emerging disruptive technologies related to drones, relevant for land, air, space, cyber, and sea. So could be quite interesting for you also there to participate. Then as said, international presences and events, the Cybersecurity Forum in Lille. We have industry delegation visits planned to France, beginning of April, which will be addressing space, cyber, and novel materials. There will be a high-level visit to Belgium, addressing the same topics, and as said before, so the Eurosatory. Then in terms of funding, so we saw throughout these presentations, there will be a Joint Defense Call in 2024. The launch is expected to be in Q1 or Q2 2024, so get already prepared as the topics, the high-level topics have already been published. And there's of course the European Defence Fund as explained by Azilis, and there will also be a dedicated info day on our side once the call has been published, but also in Q2 a dedicated matchmaking event by the European Commission, which is to take place in Q2 of 2024. And then just a last information on the EDA CapTechs with the ones where we are most active at the moment. So energy, environment, land, air, materials, space, information. If you have any questions on those, or if you are not yet part of these communities, you can contact us and we can have checked together which ones could be relevant for you. So this brings us to the end of the presentation, and I would only like to thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, so Rebecca and myself are available to guide you through all these presentations. And I'd also like to thank Azilis, Julia Silverio, who is not there today, but also François Koch, whom we are collaborating very closely on all these initiatives and which are of course also available to you. And with this, I would then like to open the floor to questions, which we can address now.
There are already some questions in the Q&A tab. So there's a chat and a Q&A tab, which have been replied. So for the joint defense call, the funding scheme, it's the Loi RDI. So it's the national scheme for the private entities and the FNR rules for the public entities. And then regarding the EDF, if it's pre-financed or paid, so it's scheme that includes pre-financing, interim payments, and final payments, depending on the advancement and completion of the work, a bit like the Horizon Europe scheme. So once the grant is signed, the coordinator receives some part of the funding, and then it has to distribute it to the partners, and throughout the completion of the project, more funding will become available. Yeah, so if you have questions on the NATO funding, how does it work? Is it pre-financing? François, can you say some words? You're muted. François, you're muted. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I'm back online. Sorry. So can you repeat the question? Sorry, I didn't completely get it.
For the different NATO instruments, the funding, is it pre-financing, interim payment, final payment? So how does the funding flows?
Yeah,
For the Diana and NIF?
depending on, yeah, it's really depending on the cases, basically. So where for Diana, it's quite clear cut. So you, as soon as you enter the process, you get the funding. But then again, for the NIF, it's very different. For the NIF, there's no general rule that is to apply. It's really for the startup and the management team to define how they're going to work together. Because, as I said before, they're doing both sides, right? They're doing direct investment. In this case, they would directly talk to the interested candidate and just define the principles together. And then when it comes to indirect funding, then it's completely different. And again, that would be on an ad hoc basis rather than something that's set in stone already. So yeah, not a great answer, but that's reflects the reality of how it works.
Great. Are there any other questions? You can put them in the Q&A or in the chat. I'd like to point out that this session has been recorded also, and it will be made available for our newsletter. The next one will be in January. And also, if okay for all the speakers, we would then also include the slides so you can access them directly.
There's a follow-up question still on NATO and the problematic connections on the NATO concept. What kind of connections do you refer to? Business connections, shareholder, team member with respective nationalities?
Yeah, good question. So it's a bit about all of them, basically. So be it for Diana or the NIF, basically what would happen is that it's left to the discretion of the team to look at it and decide whether it is problematic or not, basically. So what they would be looking at is if in case of, I mean, external funding sources that are coming from our competitors, that is the language we use in NATO, of course, they would look at it. It would not make the candidacy easier, let's put it that way. But then again here it is quite ad hoc, so they would look at it on a case-by-case basis and define if it really constitutes a problem or not, a hurdle or not. It's for them to decide. So, but obviously, I mean, it makes it more difficult. Let's be honest about it. Yeah, that includes shareholders. That includes sources of financing, previous sources of finance. They would screen, right? So yeah.
And another question, will there be any Diana test center in Luxembourg, or are there already any Diana test centers in Luxembourg?
So excellent question. Yes, there will. So I will send you the concrete setup we have for Luxembourg. So it is about to be approved, as I said, by end of December this year. So this is excellent news. We've been working hard on this. It was quite difficult and a long process, but we're now getting there. So by end of December, we'll be on the map, and you will be able to see the Technoport as our main accelerator site, but working hand in hand with a number of entities in Luxembourg. So I will send you the exact form of the construct we proposed to the Diana team. I'm happy to announce that it has been positively welcomed by the Diana team itself, but now it still has to go through the BOD approval, which is the political approval of the process, and well, this should be a formality and done by end of December. So in January 24, we'll be on the map and have our entities taking part in this process, which is great news.
And if I may also just to complement, so even though we cannot communicate yet the entities, so it will be in the priority areas of Luxembourg's defense, which are space, cyber, and novel materials.
Exactly, that's it.
And then
Very good point, Alexander. Thank you.
On the still on the Diana Center network, how does it work to integrate the test center network? So does the company just send an application? What's the process?
Sorry, I missed the beginning. Was it addressed to me again, right?
Yeah. On the test center for Diana,
Yeah.
how
Sure.
can you integrate the Diana test center network?
Sure.
I imagine because
Yeah.
there's no more information
Okay.
as a center. How can you be part of it?
Sure, of course. This goes through a national process. So the people that are not part of the scheme right now should get in touch with Alexander and myself. And for now, there is a set offer from Luxembourg, but if we want to make it wider, of course, it's always possible since sorry, it is an iterative process and they're planning on growing. But of course, it would have to make sense. And of course, the Diana team is the sole element, the sole element who's going to take the decision. So, but we can present further enhancements to our offer and grow it. So I would recommend you get in touch with Alexander and myself, and then we'll try to connect you with the NIF, the Diana team, and try to get you in, of course. But there's a set process for that, and it happens twice a year. So the next time should be around spring 24, when they're going to open up the network again and look at, we have new incoming offers. How do they make sense? How do they incorporate in the whole picture? And yeah, so, and start the discussion about this. Of course, what they want to avoid is to have proliferation of too many networks, too many entities taking part in the network, which would make it difficult to read for the startups. So it has to remain concerted effort. So yeah, but still, do take contact with us, take up contact with us, and we'll discuss it and try to get any interested entity in, of course.
Yeah, also here, if I could complement, so once the entities will be published, I think we can also discuss on how this could be matched together, because I think these are entities you will see that are quite known in Luxembourg and which has already all this also this role of federating entities together. But we'll come back to that more by the beginning of the year.
Exactly.
There's another question. So it's testimony, I would say. So this person registered in June for the Diana News on the website, but he had the impression that to register to Diana, you require the involvement of LXC, Luxinnovation. So how to apply to the Diana Challenge? Do you need involvement of Luxinnovation from Diana?
If I may answer on that question, and then François, you can complement. I think in general, so Luxinnovation is acting as a partner for the Directorate of Defense and all the related initiatives in NATO, EU, and national. So our job is really also to make this first pre-check or due diligence on you, see also with you what makes sense in terms of the different initiatives, and then also together with the colleagues from the DoD to see in the next steps how this could be further developed. Therefore, I think that's maybe also the reason why in the slides we always position both Luxinnovation and the DoD as contact partners to provide the maximum possible of support.
No more
Great.
questions. So I'll leave you the last words, Alex.
Yeah, great. I think then we are on time. I mean, we started a little bit late, so 1.5 hours are over. I would like to thank all of the participants, the speakers, and of course the industry and research representatives that took part in the sessions. You will get access to it. And I think now we all deserve a end of the year, going towards Christmas time for relaxing time, and then we'll be ready to start with full energy next year. And we're looking to collaborate with all of you in full cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank
you
you,
very much.
Alexander. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
thank
Alex.
you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Thank you, bye.